Good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you very much for being here. And especially thank you for the committee of CIESM for the invitation, especially Frédéric Briand. I'm a fisheries biologist from the University of the Algarve, from the Center of Marine Studies. And for more than 20 years, I work in fisheries dealing with discard studies, and most recently on also assessing bycatch of marine protected species. And I make efforts to use fishermen as a special tool, as they are very special users of the marine environment. And they bring a lot of knowledge that can be integrated in our studies to provide us the best solutions possible to work management. So the title of my presentation today was how to integrate and give you examples. It has a practical side of it because I will show you some information, some data, and some results of the most recent projects that I've been involved with, and working together with fishermen and how to integrate that information. So I will start first just to reminding me of Frédéric Briand on his talk on the first day. I remember in one of his slides that he mentioned that in the early 70s, while he was taking his PhD in California, and he showed a very funny picture, that was, those were the years considered the end of the age of the innocence. That was what was perceived in land, but actually in the marine world, that started, I would say, 20 years earlier. And the turning point is definitely the mid part of the 20th century. Up to that, years, in the mid-50s, the uses that we had from the marine world were very basic, very artisanal. And after that, in a very quick pace, and it was already stressed by some panelists on Tuesday, the uses have grown exponentially and new activities have emerged. Very dramatic impositions to the marine world that has been draining and draining and draining everything that exists, okay? And the main reason for that, it's demands that comes from us as human beings, as humanity. And after this, I'd like to usually make an association with my own experience and my historical background, because I come from fishing families, okay? And my grandparents, my father, they were fishermen and fishing ladies. You have pictures here of my grandmothers, one of my grandmothers, the other one here. And this is the same. And you can see the resemblance that usually people say that I look a lot like my grandmother here. And then one of my grandfathers also was a fisherman, and my dad, most recently. And making this association, I could see the pattern that I just explained previously, that these pictures in green, this one looks yellow, but actually it's green, it's towards the sustainable side and use, okay, in the 40s and the 50s of the 20th century, where most of my family was working in artisanal fisheries, beach seine, purse seine, coastal bottom set nets. And as human behavior moved towards, we are ambitious as a human being, obviously, and we want better for our families and to provide more and provide more income. So as we were, especially poor country until the early 70s, because of the dictatorship that we had, there was not a lot of income, so some family members needed to immigrate, okay? And we see that my grandfather, for example, in the 60s and the 70s, he immigrated to Africa and started working in not so sustainable fisheries like trawling, for example. And in the 80s, And until the early years of the 21st century, us as a family and my dad immigrated to America and started working on the Marçalo trawling. So I can see a pattern of how resources were being explored, and we as a family were also moved with that route, okay? So there have been several consequences and damaging consequences to the marine world, and obviously the first one that stands out is overexploitation at several levels, okay? And everything is anthropogenic, everything is caused by us and by our demands. And the main reasons that lead to these very dramatic consequences are coming from very deficient fisheries management that has been occurred for a long time. And these are problems and challenges that are very actual, okay? And until now, we still struggle to find a way to solve these problems. I like to point some of them: inadequate fisheries regulations, okay? We cannot still control fishing effort and fishing capacity. Governments still don't have regulations to control that. We still have governments that subsidize unsustainable fisheries at a very high level. Most of offshore trawling that occurs in offshore waters of the Atlantic and Pacific and in the Indic, they are subsidized because they were not profitable if not subsidized by their flag countries. So that's really unfortunate. Lack of implementation and enforcement, lack of surveillance, we really suffer from that. I have the example of my own country here, Portugal, and I go on fishing trips regularly with fishermen, and I see directly that there are some illegal practices on a daily basis being done because they're not controlled. There's no surveillance power to control them. Lack of transparency and traceability, and here we as public, as consumers, have a voice. We still don't ask many questions when we go to the market to buy fish, where it comes from, if it was captured by a sustainable fishery, if the stock of that species is in a good level. Failure to follow scientific advice. This is crucial, and especially crucial taking an example here in Portugal with the assessment of sardine, which was the ruler of our coastal resources for the longest time until it collapsed. The stock collapsed less than 10 years ago. And scientists struggle to pass the message that the stock is really not doing nicely, but still managers of the fishery keep pressuring to keep fishing, so the recommendations are not followed. And I could go on and on, but I will stop here. There are not enough marine protected areas in the ocean. Only less than 10% of the ocean is considered marine protected areas, and even from those less than 10%, in only about less than 3%, it's no-go areas or no fishing occurs. On the other ones, they still occur. So we are in big trouble, and how to work this out? Up to very recently, and up to the beginning of the 20th century, the approach was really a top-to-bottom approach from policymakers to fishermen, and that didn't work until in one of the reforms of the Common Fisheries Policy in 2002, it was a turning point to think that we had to rethink ways to work management in fisheries and try to, work upside down from bottom to up. because that could lead to some improvements, and some improvements could be on integrating of local knowledge and be more transparent in those management processes, reducing also conflict situations, and try to improve compliance with rules and regulations if we sit everybody on a table and we explain what the problem is and find solutions together. Be more inclusive, and also that probably could lead to legitimate the management processes. So we are right now for 20 years battling to work with this perspective that we have co-management if we find a balance between two main components: the environment, the conservation, and the economy. And the best way to approach it is definitely to have all the stakeholders, all the users sit on the same table to discuss what the problems are. So we are at the stage that we really have to care about people and care about the values and try to bring understanding on top of the table. So who are the stakeholders? Who are the users for each one of the components? Obviously, for the conservation components, scientists, NGOs, governmental entities. At some point, on the economic and social side, the fishers and fishers associations. And for this to work, there are several ingredients. I have a special gift. I'm not like the special one, like Mourinho, but I really have special ingredients of my own because I grew in a fishing family. So I know the main ideas and barriers that I can find dealing socially with fishermen. But main ingredients for success are really trust bonds, the first one. Trust bonds are crucial to build bridges between stakeholders, and especially us scientists and fishers. A lot of respect, listen to different cultures, to different perspectives, to understand and respect education levels, different backgrounds. And this was last minute, but was missing, and it's really important. Be very, very patient and persistent, okay? When we deal with fishermen, when we approach them, the first thing that we listen from them is complaints. But then they gradually adjust and share their knowledge. And so don't give up if you approach them and they say no, they don't want to talk to you or to do a harbor inquiry. Just have time to listen first for their complaints, and then bring your own perspective, and then they open the whole world. Most of the times that happens. And if you're a woman, it's even better. You're more successful. So now moving on, just to give brief examples of my work, especially on two projects that I've worked at the Center of Marine Studies with the Coastal Fisheries Group. That is a huge group with a lot of colleagues. And the first example was an European H2020 project that just finished recently, and that had several partners around Europe. And several case studies adapted to several different fisheries, where in each case study specified for each fishery, it was discussed the best way to mitigate discards, okay? So this was the Minnow project, and most recently, still in progress, it's Univ Pesca, which is a project that works mitigation of bycatch of protected, endangered, and threatened species, especially cetaceans. And so it works the reduction of interactions of marine protected species and the coastal Algarve fisheries. Okay, and in both of these projects, we really use fishers as a main tool through participatory approaches. So starting with the Minnow project, mitigation of discards. The case study for our group was called the Persane fishery. So we had to find ways to mitigate discards or particularly, we had to find ways to improve survivorship of discarded fish in the fishery, okay? Because how the fishery operates, it deals that at the end of the operations, the fish never leaves the water. So when it's discarded or slipped, it's called slipping in perseining because it's made to slip over the headline. The fish has potential to survive if it's treated in a good way. So the approach as a participatory approach was to bring a question on top of a table and invite several stakeholders, okay? This is more or less the model of our sessions. We have scientists, fishers associations, governmental entities, and we usually have a facilitator that moderates the meeting. And in this case, we asked what solutions can be put into practice, identified existing already in practice that you may have and want to share with us, or find new solutions, okay? So we held a lot of workshops until in one workshop, one of the fishers, which is here, Paulinho, just delivered that you are already had in practice a mitigation tool, okay? So basically us as scientists, okay, you have a mitigation tool, let's try it out as scientists. So we wanted to compare very simply what was the modified sleeping technique that he was using, and I will show you more details in a video after my talk. So I won't have many details here, but basically he was just using weights to create an escape window before hauling completely the net and allow the sardines to escape, not being crowded, not losing scale. And so we wanted to compare this modified sleeping technique with the standard sleeping technique, which is bringing the fish all crowded until the limit where it's stressed, loses a lot of scale, and increases the potential of mortality. So we went through an experiment on a fishing trip where we retrieved fish from a fishing net that we called control when the net was very loose. Then we asked the fishermen to apply the weights. It created the escape window. We retrieved sardines. And then finally, the last treatment was the standard sleeping treatment. So as scientists, very controlled, we transported those fish to captivity. We did different treatments, obviously, for statistics, you know, very important. And the main results were this. And the main idea, just keep that in mind, the main idea and the main tool was created by this fisherman that was already in practice, okay? The main results are this. Actually, the modified sleeping had the same survival rate as the control, very similar, and was 3 times higher than the standard sleeping, okay? So that was a great result. And we also measured stress in blood and scale loss and physiological stress was also higher in the standard sleeping, okay? I'll show you a movie afterwards, and I'll move on finally to the last project where we keep on working using the same methods, which is holding a lot of participatory meetings with the stakeholders. The strategic is different along the project depending on the question that we want to answer. First, we have a main big picture meeting where we have all the stakeholders, and we always have to have drinks and some food also. And then we move along until we move along, and when we have volunteer fishermen that want to work with us, sometimes we need to be in face-to-face conversations with them to explain what we want to do and put in practice. So you have down there a poster from Alexandra with some results when we were trying to define levels of interaction and bycatch of protected, endangered, and threatened species in several coastal fisheries in the Algarve. And we did interviews, arbor interviews along the whole Algarve coast to detect which were the most problematic gears, the most problematic species and areas along the Algarve. The map doesn't show very well here, but this is the Algarve, the southern part of Portugal. And we could see immediately revealed by the fishermen that the area where most of the problems occur with the interaction, especially with bottom nose dolphins, are in the eastern part of the Algarve. Alexandra presented some results on Tuesday on the Cooperative Research and Society session, and it has a poster with more results down there. Finally, we are on a stage right now of testing mitigation measures with them. We're testing acoustic alarms with some boats, where we're having very promising results. I'm not presenting them here, but so far, and from last year, from the meeting at the workshop at CIESM, and speaking with some researchers in there, they were saying that they were using the same acoustic alarms and not getting good results with their fisheries in the Mediterranean, but somehow, and in the south of Portugal, these acoustic alarms adapted to this fishery are working very well. We retrieve a lot of information from fishers by providing them with logbooks so they can register voluntarily on a daily basis information on catch, bycatch, and several other aspects that are tools for us to study. And on the purse seine fishing, for example, where there is a problem of bycatch of common dolphins, we're developing better techniques to improve survivorship of dolphins retrieved out of the nets. This is the common way that they use, which is very bad for the animal. And we invented, together with a fisherman, a stretcher to accommodate the animals in a good way and improve the survivorship. So basically, the takeaway message from my work, especially, and my experience, is that it is possible to combine fishers' knowledge with scientists' knowledge. Definitely, fishers' knowledge is taken as a know-how of the field, of the world, and their operations are really useful, and their ideas are really useful. And we as scientists, we have the tools and the concept and the knowledge to invent experiments and prove things, okay? And suggest new strategies. So this is a tool for co-management and fishery sustainability. And that's it. I have a movie, very fast, just 2 minutes, very short, okay? Just to show you, it's a small version of the movie that we usually use in workshops to show that discard mitigation tool, okay? So this was the seiner where we did the experiment of creating the escape window. We went on board with the fishermen. This was the skipper, Paulinho. The application of the weights to create the escape window. It's a very fast and easy method. They just have to use it more often. the monitoring in captivity. That's it. Thank you.